Good afternoon. Be like Cub Scouts, fingers up. Good afternoon. My name is Larissa Rush, and I am the chair of the Advisory Council for the Center of Equity, Gender, and Leadership, affectionately known as EGAL. My day job is as a vice president and fixed income portfolio manager at the San Francisco-based firm of Dodge & Cox. We've got some colleagues here. But I am really very personally excited to be here today to hear from one of my personal heroes. My interest in feminist activism began in 1982 when, as a sophomore in high school, I led an awareness-building campaign about the importance of the Equal Rights Amendment. Of course, Gloria was doing this at the national level. But I wanted to talk a bit about EGAL, which is the brainchild of, I'm going to start calling you activist academic, Professor Kellie McElhaney, who's also a hero of mine. And the AmpEquity series that she and her student board created is a really critical part of the mission of EGAL, which is to educate equity-fluent leaders to ignite and accelerate change. And of course, Kellie and Gloria have been igniting and accelerating change their whole lives. But what we're hoping to do with the AmpEquity series is to give you exposure to people who have been doing such things and hope that their stories will inspire and educate all of you to become better equity-fluent leaders so that you too can ignite and accelerate change. Now, before we get to hear from Kellie and Gloria today, we have a special sneak preview for you of a film that was made about Gloria called Seeing Allred. We showed the film last night, and you can see it on Netflix, but what we'll do is we'll show you a trailer, which is fantastic, about the film, and then we'll have you join me in welcoming Kellie and Gloria to the stage. So thank you again for coming today, and enjoy.
I'm so proud of all of the women who have had the courage to speak out. Rich, famous, powerful men have to understand there are rules, there are boundaries. They must respect those boundaries. This has got to end, and it needs to end right now.
There is a war on women. Women depend on me to be strong and to assert and protect their rights.
Joining us now, civil rights attorney.
Please welcome Gloria Allred.
She talked about sexual harassment, race, women's rights, when nobody wanted to talk about it.
He thinks no more women will come forward. He is very wrong. Power only understands power. Fighting injustice is a commitment that I made many years ago.
She understands what we are experiencing based on what she had experienced herself.
What happened to me was absolutely shocking. To this day, I can't even think about it.
Is this getting too personal?
My commitment to women comes from my own life experience.
I have this venom toward Gloria Allred.
Wherever you see Allred, you know somebody's lying.
That's assault. That is assault.
I think Gloria enjoys conflict. This makes her a great champion for us.
People say she's loud, she's got an ego. She must just love the camera.
She's trying to turn women into men.
I think secretly you envy women and you fear them.
I just say, haven't you met any men like that?
You should use these resources to arrest these fathers who are not paying their child support.
If it wouldn't have been for Gloria, Nicole would have always been just that person on the gurney.
We deserve to know if Mr. Cosby is a sexual predator.
This is not state law as we see it. Hopefully next year you can issue the marriage license. That can help people evolve from being a victim
'Cause I'm on fire,
to becoming a survivor, to becoming a fighter for change. Women are now empowered, and they will never be silent again.
Burn this whole place down.
This is where the revolution begins.
What an entrance. That was awesome.
And it was all for you.
Woo. I know you're never supposed to say this, but I am nervous because of who was sitting beside me and who I had to drive last night from the airport. Talk about pressure. Before I do the really difficult job of introducing such a long and esteemed career, I want to tell you how I started my day. If you read the New York Times, there was a letter today in the New York Times, and I won't read all of it, but it is a letter to Dr. Blasey Ford from Tarana Burke and the other leaders of #MeToo, and I immediately thought of you. And I'll just read a little bit of it to Dr. Blasey Ford. The morning of your testimony, we gathered. As we waited for you to arrive, we were quiet. We remembered Professor Anita Hill. We remembered how she was treated in that committee room by some of the same people you were facing. We remembered our trauma and the trauma of our loved ones. We remembered the times we had not been believed. We remembered the times we had been believed and disparaged anyway. We remembered how long ago we'd put our pain in a box and tucked it away so we'd be able to survive in a world that didn't care. When you walked into that room, we kept our hope on lockdown. A woman's hope is dangerous in a world that continues to break her heart. So we watched the proceedings from a distance. That was a rough way to start my day, so thank you for bringing it up fast. When we were driving back from the airport last night, I asked Gloria, do you live in LA or New York? And she took a big breath and said, home is where my shoes are, and there are wrongs to be righted, which I thought was brilliant. So I want to introduce decidedly not Barbara Boxer, for whom she gets confused for. Gloria, you know, it's a 7-page bio, so I picked out what I picked out, and you can talk about.
That's, you know, all feminists look alike, right? So that's why you confused me with Barbara Boxer.
We look angry even with lipstick. Gloria went to University of Pennsylvania. First of all, she grew up in Pennsylvania in a working class home and is an only child in Philadelphia. Went to UPenn for undergraduate when there were 7% females at the university. Went on to get her master's at NYU, has her JD from Loyola, LA. I'm just gonna jump right into it. She's a founding partner of the law firm Allred, Morocco, and Goldberg. It is the leading women's rights law firm for 42 years. President Obama said you're the best attorney in the country. I just want to say a few more things, and then I want to introduce my friend and the filmmaker. Gloria has been a fearless crusader, not just for gender, but for race, for sexual orientation, for transgender, for same-sex marriage. Anybody who does not have a voice or is not treated with equity, Gloria speaks for. Sophie, could you stand up? I know you're humble, but I'm going to make you anyway and wave. Sophie is the filmmaker of Seeing Allred. She's a truth teller, a storyteller, a filmmaker. She made the film with her partner, Roberta. Gloria said you're her most admired person. Sophie said you're her North Star. Sophie came up with a really great t-shirt. If anybody wants to make a lot of money, #indelible hippocampus, which I think would be brilliant. And she's currently writing another film, directing and making another film on grassroots activists, including Ana Maria Archila, which is the woman that approached Senator Fisk in the elevator. I don't know if any of you saw that. So Sophie knows where to be at the right time. Enough, Gloria. I would love to, I really was drawn by so much in the film, but I really want you to start with this construct about power only understands power. Particularly today in terms of who holds the power. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I think what we saw in the Senate Judiciary Committee political theater hearings was just the exercise of raw power. And, you know, it wasn't anything approaching a legal process. There was no due process. I mean, there's never been a trial where some of the judges announced in advance how they were going to vote, where there are no standards, burden of proof, where witnesses are excluded who might have relevant evidence, where there's not an opportunity to really explore all of the relevant facts. So it was about power. It was the exercise of power by those who had it, namely Republican members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who are in the majority, with a chairperson who had, you know, he knew what he was going to do, except perhaps for the, I hate to call it an FBI investigation because it was a truncated FBI investigation, which was unlike most investigations, which would really explore all the facts and not have a time limit on when they could do it and who they could speak to or how long they could, you know, it was just absurd. I'm sure there are many people in the FBI that would be embarrassed to call it an FBI investigation. So it was about the exercise of power. It was about an example of what I call, well, I've made up my mind, don't confuse me with the facts. Yes, I'm a radical. I do still think truth matters. I still think that facts matter. I guess my education gets in the way of just jumping to conclusions before I have the facts. That's what you learn in a university. You learn to really analyze before you jump to a conclusion. But there are people who are in power who've decided what the conclusion should be. So the only answer is to take the power and to change those who are in positions of power. And the only way to achieve that is through the empowerment of people who care about facts, people who care about truth, people who care about fairness in the process, and getting them out to vote in November. That's what it's all about. And as I just said a little bit at the luncheon, which preceded this, I tend not to use the word hope. I know Tawana, and I have a great deal of respect for her and the hashtag she created. But I always say hope is a child's word. So I catch myself when I say, well, I hope this and I hope that. Okay, I don't want to say hope. Hope is not going to win change in this country. It's only empowerment and working for change and making it happen that is going to make a difference. Hoping for it by the subordinated class and by the minorities in our country is not going to change anything. It's better than not hoping, but it's not going to win change, okay? So it's what I always quote Mother Jones on: pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. That's what it's all about.
I have so many quotes that I'm going to take from here. I will attribute them to you, but speaking of hope, you had, again, a line in the movie that said you were optimistic in your 20s. Are you more or less or equally optimistic today?
Well, I'm not the person who says the keg is half full. But I still am an optimist. You know, I know that a pessimist has been defined as an inverted idealist. So I try not to, become pessimistic. It's not it's not useful for me to be pessimistic. It accomplishes nothing. and gets in the way of helping to accomplish real change. So I am essentially an optimist, but I'm also a realist, and I know what needs to be done. And I do have a sense of urgency every day about the injustice that I see. And, you know, I always remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that, you know, we should always be impatient about injustice, I'm paraphrasing, but that there's no reason for us to be patient or say, well, okay, we can do this tomorrow. Tomorrow is too late. We need to do it right now. We needed to do it yesterday. So that's a long answer to, yes, I'm optimistic, but I'm also a realist.
Realistically optimistic.
Yeah, I'm realistic.
I could use more of that.
Yeah.
You don't drink, so is there something you do to remain optimistic?
Yeah, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs, I never have. I don't judge anyone who does. But I need a clear head at all times because I have many, many decisions and choices to make every day and every evening and on weekends and holidays in reference to, you know, vindicating the rights of my clients, protecting their rights, asserting their rights, thinking about which cases we will take, which cases we don't take, what the strategy should be, you know, what my co-counsels are doing or my associates or partners, and what I think should happen next in the process, or if there should be a process, or how to deal with the opposing counsel. I mean, so I just need a clear head at all times. For me to remain optimistic, I'm very action-oriented, all right? So making decisions, learn how to make a decision, and this is what I share with my clients, you have to weigh the benefits and the risks of any decision. I'm sure those of you in the business school do that all the time when you think about business decisions. You should do that in your personal life and political life and sports and whatever. Every choice is really, whether you're consciously thinking of it or not, you're weighing benefits versus risks. And then you're making your decision. And I think information is power, so I think that's the way it's best for like my clients. I don't, for example, tell people you should speak out, go on the internet, say somebody raped you, or say somebody, you know, a celebrity, or no, I tell people the benefits and risks of any decision, and then if they're adults, they make that decision, and I may be able to support them or I may not be able to, depending on what their decision is. But taking action keeps me optimistic because I know we're doing something. Sitting on the sidelines, escaping, is not going to make a difference. It's not a good use of my energy. You, Kelly, have talked about investing, right, rather than donating. Well, I think you have to think about your time as an investment. And thank you for investing and coming here today. But it really is an investment. Your time, people usually are often more protective of their money and their investments than they are of their time. But you can generally earn more money, but you can't earn more time. So you have to think, how are you investing it? It's finite. Okay, so, I mean, it's fine to, you know, go and have fun, and that refreshes you, and, you know, every moment does not have to be fighting this war. But then come back and, you know, live your values, you decide what your priorities are. And everybody can make a difference in some way, usually more than one way. Like Gloria Steinem says, you can tell what your values are by looking at your checkbook. Okay, so that's what and then think about how you're investing your time, and then you know. When I was sitting there taking my undergraduate degree at Penn and master's degree at NYU, I had no idea that I would be doing today what I've been doing for the last 42 years. No clue. And you may not know, but, you know, follow your heart. You have a passion for some area, or you will. And everybody can make a difference. You don't have to be a lawyer, as we say, you know, as I say in my book about Rosa Parks. You know, you don't have to be rich or famous or wealthy or even have your name well known. Everybody can make a difference many differences in your life. So just be alert for those opportunities to help win change, and you'll be making a difference. Seize that opportunity.
And I want to give a shout out. Her book is called Fight Back and Win. So don't now get on Amazon, but as soon as you leave here.
It's from 2006, but we've kept it up.
Well, speaking of 2006, I got this sense in watching the movie and spending time with you that you sort of came out of your mother's womb as an activist. Do you remember the first time you just felt that calling? Because I think not everyone takes on the scary role of being an activist.
I don't really remember that time, but my mother was from Manchester, England, which was the home of the Pankhursts, the suffragists in England, those very brave, so much braver and more courageous than I've ever been. Women who fought for the right to vote in England and, you know, just organized, and they were a minority and they were spat upon, and families broke up, and they were taken to jail, and they were forcibly fed because they went on a fast to win the right to vote. And one woman, Emily Davison, threw herself in front of the king's horse and was killed because she wanted to make a statement that women deserve the right to vote, and they didn't have it. And there was a mass funeral for her. And anyway, it took many years. They finally won the right to vote. So this is, you know, I feel a connection to those pioneers, because we do have such a long way to go for women and for minorities in this country. I never knew how bad it was until I got into the practice of law, and in 42 years, there is some progress, but you know, I always say, like a conservative will say, well, look at all the progress over the years, Gloria, and look how far we've come for women. And I say, well, look how far we have to go, because we're not equal yet as a feminist. So I'm not satisfied with the progress we have won for women in this country, and we still have a long, long way to go. And I don't expect that I'll ever be satisfied in my lifetime, because I see how much violence against women there still is, how much sexual harassment, how much child sexual abuse, how much economic equality in pay, title, and responsibility, how much they can't get their child support on time or in the amount that is ordered, how much spousal abuse there is, how much pregnancy discrimination still exists, the sexual harassment that stops women from being able to progress to the top. Why don't we have more women at the top of Fortune 500 companies? Really? You think there are no barriers to getting there? There are so many. This is not a downer. This is just a dose of reality for you, okay? Get ready. It's not a pretty world out there, okay? I'm not overstating this, because I'm dealing with these cases every day. Sexual harassment is going to be one of the biggest barriers you face in coming up that corporate ladder and staying there and moving up. Think in advance how you're going to deal with it, because you will deal with it in some ways. Or sex discrimination, or race discrimination, sexual orientation, ethnic discrimination. It's out there, okay? And they're talking, they're posting their posters, and they're doing their training programs, and there's not much monitoring in the workplace. And in the end, it's the person of most value to them that they want to keep. And that's generally not you. So you're going to have to think, and hopefully your university is going to prepare you for this. And if not, you're probably going to end up calling me or someone like me, okay? And that's it. And that's a big threat to them, which is a good thing, okay? But, you know, as I was saying earlier, there are a lot of women doing confidential settlements so they can go on with their careers and not have their next employer know that they filed a claim or complaint, grievance in their workplace. But there are big issues out there, okay, for you in the workplace. And they're not, for the most part, going to be as enlightened as you people at UC Berkeley are. Get ready for that. There's a whole world out there that doesn't see things the way I do and the way you do. And they don't see it the way I do until I'm in a room with their opposing counsel. And then the light bulb is going on because then they're going to have to pay for what they didn't do in reality and they just talked about at corporate seminars. Yeah, if you think I'm angry, I am. Every day. Every way. Because I know people. Yeah, I do. And they're going to have to deal with that. Because I know a lot of you were probably like I was. When I was in college, and master's degree, I was commuting, I was working full-time as a teacher, taking classes, and then working at night, Cerebral Palsy Foundation, and commuting, and taking care of a child, and, a lot of pressures, a lot of sacrifices you're making, and then to be graduated with this prestigious degree, which you're going to get from your MBA program or whatever program you're in, and then to have to face what's going on out there, really? Yeah, that makes me angry. And they're going to have to start walking the walk and not just saying, oh, yeah, we have an equal employment opportunity policy. Really? Then implement it. Then monitor what's going on in your workplace. Then protect the person who is the victim and make it safe for her to come forward and not be retaliated against if she does or he does. So that's what we're dealing with, not just what's on the face of the corporations. Oh yeah, we donated to this and we donated to that. Really? How about protecting the victim, your employee? So this is what they get to me, which is why they're not thrilled when they get a letter from me. Okay, because I'm not going to be general. I'm going to be really specific. I am going to name names and I am going to seek justice. And so that's a teaching moment for them. This is what we call the reckoning. The era of the reckoning, except that we've been doing this for 42 years. And there's still a long, long way to go. But the good news is you're going to have more diversity in the workplace because they have to, that's why. And because they'll slowly begin to realize that you're a real asset to them, okay? It's good business sense to have the best assets in the business. And you are the best assets. Some of them just don't realize it yet.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit channeling my inner white male.
Okay.
We're graduating 1,000 equity fluent leaders a year from this business school, so watch out, world. I'm really confident that.
Okay, good.
I'm proud.
Okay, good.
Men and women, by the way. Our male students are phenomenal, and male colleagues, both of you. I mean, not just. I say all of them are.
We've actually won a big case many years ago for our male client who was sexually harassed by another male in the workplace. And we won a multi-million-dollar verdict for him. We also represented a male who alleged he was sexually harassed by a female in the workplace. And he's a victim, so we represented him. And then he alleged he was retaliated against because he protested the sexual harassment. That's also against the law, retaliation. And we won a multi-million-dollar verdict for him. The jury didn't believe that he was sexually harassed, but they did believe he was retaliated against because he had a reasonable belief that he was sexually harassed, and they awarded us a multi-million-dollar verdict. I think it was $16 million against Vaughn's, where I went to get my salad that night. So,
I'm sure they love seeing you walk in.
I know. I had no food in the refrigerator. But anyway, you all know how that goes, right? So anyway, go ahead.
I'm just going to ask one more question and then turn it over to the audience. But there was, again, this incredibly powerful, because you're such a good filmmaker, scene, Sophie, in the movie where you were, it was the day after the Washington March. And there was a protest happening, sort of an ad hoc, and you were in the middle of it. And Sophie was there with her iPhone videotaping it. And this white gentleman got right in your face. I mean, it felt like he was nose to nose.
He was.
And was...
Trump supporter.
He was not saying nice things, and Gloria's face just remained perfectly calm as he was breathing into your face. And then
Make America Great Again hat on. Right.
So imagine how one would feel. And you looked at him straight in the eye after he ranted for a bit and said, "Thank you for expressing your point of view. You matter." How did you do that?
Well, this is a spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the film. But anyway, first of all, thank you to Sophie. You did a great job producing this film. I mean, she's amazing. And how did I do that? Well, first of all, the whole thing was a spontaneous moment, which Sophie didn't know was going to happen, and I didn't know was going to happen. And essentially what happened was Sophie talked me into going to the Lincoln Memorial the day after the Women's March, and I was completely exhausted. And I said, please, no. And she said, no, I just want to take one picture of you standing at the top by yourself.
Easy, right? Easy.
Just easy. And then go and get the train to New York or wherever you're going. I said, okay. So we go there. I get out of the car. I walk up to the top. And the cameraman was at the bottom because he was going to just take this long shot, and that was it. And I looked over, and I see this whole group of protesters, probably from the Women's March. And they're there on the steps, a little over to the side, and they're chanting, and I thought, wait a minute, I can't just stand here and take a picture and leave. I have to go and support the protesters. So I started walking over. I don't think I even told Sophie I was going to do it. I just suddenly left. And I'm walking over, and I worked my way into the crowd just to stand there and, chant with them. And then I see these guys. I saw guys with the hats, the MAGA hats, and I thought I was getting into what my daughter would call it, my Lucy moment. Lucy. Naughtiness coming up, a little naughty. Okay, so I thought I'm going to just stand behind them. They won't even see me because they're facing forward. And then the cameraman's going to have a picture of me behind these guys with the hats, all right? So I kind of worked my way through the crowd on the steps, and I stood behind them. And they're chanting against the women who were chanting for whatever. And all of a sudden, they turned around, which I had no idea they were going to do. And they looked at me, this small group of them, and I was like, oh, deer in the headlights. Oh, my God. One of the guys said, Gloria Allred. It's like shocked. And so I'm there in the crowd, hemmed in. And then he starts, what he said in the film about, the next 4 years, you're going to be really upset because all your gay friends are going to die or commit suicide, whatever it is he said. Mm. And then he's ranting on. And I'm thinking, let's see, how do I deal with this guy? This is going on in my head. He's expressing his very strong feelings. And, I don't know if there's going to be violence or not, but I don't want anybody to get hurt. I can deal with it because I've dealt with people who were tough for all these years, and I used to teach in very tough high schools and so forth before I became a lawyer. So I just let him go on until he was finished, and then I said something to, thank you very much, sir, for expressing your free speech, which we both value in this country. It's very important. And then I said, may I ask him your name? I asked him his name, and he said, well, something about, my name doesn't matter. And I said, well, actually, it does matter because you matter, and we all value. And that kind of took him back, like he was expecting me to be argumentative and confrontational. So it's always better to do the unexpected in a confrontational situation. And then I just engaged in a dialogue. I don't remember everything, but it's on the film. And that was it. And to have a conversation, not to have a confrontation, which is what he wanted, but he didn't get. And just to always come from a place of respect, because we do care about free speech, and they have their right to free speech. Of course, I disagree with what they have to say, but there's no point in getting, having a confrontational argument with him at that point. It wouldn't result in a learning experience for him, and it wouldn't accomplish anything. So, well, you'll see what happened in the film, but it's interesting because Sophie will tell you that I'm always in this gay and lesbian pride parade in West Hollywood every year, and I have been for, 30, 40 years, something like that, and I've never missed a year. And it turns out that he was there across the street. There's always a group across the street with bullhorns shouting about how we're all going to hell if we care about gay and lesbian rights and so forth, and we're all sinners and that kind of thing. And I'm always, you know, shouting back at them. But anyway, he was there in West Hollywood, so I don't know if he travels, from just to different demonstrations. I don't know what he does, but so yeah, to remain calm and to always respect every human being, even if they oppose you, and even if you think they're wrong. You know, it's always an opportunity to change maybe their minds or their behavior. And really, it's always a test of who you are, not just a test of who they are. So that's what it's all about.
That's the clear-mindedness that is hard to have.
Well, yeah. So that's what we always have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's effective. I'm going to turn it over to the audience. If you would go to the mics and maybe go fast so we can get a lot of questions in. I mean, don't hurt each other.
And I'll shorten my answers so we get more questions in.
But if you'll go to the mics, and Gloria is an amazing question answerer. There's really nothing that seems to shock her. So
no.
I'm not throwing out the gauntlet to you, but anyone. Yay, Francesca.
Oh, just me? Okay, great. Gloria, first off, thank you so much for being here today. Incredible film. I saw it last night, and truly inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question for you is something that I'm struggling with personally, and I'd love your thoughts. Where does innocent until proven guilty fit in with always believing the survivor?
Well, that's a really great question. First of all, I don't believe every survivor or person who says she is a survivor or he says he's a survivor. So I wouldn't say everybody should always believe about everything. On the other hand, I do believe in due process for everybody, and that's the accused and the accuser. We didn't see any due process in the hearing that was held in the Senate Judiciary Committee. In reference to the internet, people, the hashtag #MeToo on the internet, people going on, everybody has a right to free speech, but everybody also has to bear the consequences of the free speech. So for example, if people go on, say, so-and-so celebrity raped me, they are risking being sued for defamation, having to hire a lawyer to defend them. That's not me. I don't do defensive defamation cases, and that's usually pretty expensive to have to hire a lawyer to defend you against that. But you have the right to do it, but then you have the consequences by the person who says, I didn't get any due process and I've been accused. So I'll get my due process by suing you in a court of law for defamation. So that's essentially it. Due process means notice and an opportunity to be heard in a fair hearing. Okay, Dr. Ford didn't get a fair hearing. Judge Kavanaugh did not get a fair hearing. Of course, because of the exercise of raw power, Judge Kavanaugh's become Justice Kavanaugh. And Dr. Ford, I believe, is a hero to many in the movement. So it really depends on the situation. I'm a big fan of due process as a lawyer, but I recognize, some men have said to me, Gloria, where's the due process? Okay, I'm accused on the internet. I'd say, with all due respect, if you would like to fight to change and eliminate the statute of limitations for sexual assault and for rape, then people can have survivors or accusers can have due process in a court of law. But because the statute of limitations, which is the arbitrary time period set by law, different in every state, different for the type of crime alleged, different for whether you're an adult survivor of child sexual abuse or a child survivor or an adult survivor of adult abuse and so forth. If you want to help to eliminate this arbitrary bar to access to the courts, then great, let's do that. And then many individuals who are barred, prohibited from having access to court by the statute of limitations will be able to go to court and have access to due process, and you will too. But some of them can't because it's too late because of the statute of limitations. So there's no due process available in the court of law. Unless you would like to waive and give up, you can. I mean, statute of limitations and affirmative defense, you can give that up and say, okay, I won't assert that, and they could have access in a court of law to me, but almost nobody does that. The accused don't do that. So that's kind of my answer to, that is my answer. Yeah, everybody deserves due process, but sometimes you can't get it in a court of law.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Hi. Why do you think Trump was elected, and what does that say about our progress?
What does that say about our what?
Our progress.
Our progress? Okay, well, Mr. Trump, whom I know and who knows me, was... Well, I mean, I guess you would have to ask the Russians to answer part of that question. As I always say, truth is the biggest casualty of what's been going on in our country and continues to go on. So that's part of it. It's not all of it. But certainly, you know, questions have to be asked. The Electoral College has something to do with it. There are those who have alleged that certain precincts in certain key states were targeted for propaganda by those who supported Trump, some of them having to do with perhaps state actors and Russians. I'm not going to say that's the only factor. It's not. And, you know, but I'm saying I think that those of you who have more expertise in the area of analyzing it would probably give a better answer than I did. But is there something wrong when someone gets 3 million more votes and loses the election? Well, part of that has to do with Electoral College. But, you know, Democrat and Republican operatives are certainly aware of the Electoral College. So that's not like a big surprise to anybody. So those areas needed to be targeted better as well. So I don't know the answer to that, but now we're dealing with the after effects and the consequences. And now everybody will have an opportunity in next month to make their voices known. But what everyone's always saying, elections have consequences. For those who didn't know that, for those who said, my vote doesn't matter, serious consequences, like what's happening on the Supreme Court, catastrophe, disaster, I don't know what, as a lawyer, it's going to be very challenging. That's putting it very mildly in the next decade, the next couple of decades, for rights for those who we care about, for Roe v. Wade. As I said, it is going to have an impact on everybody's life that is sitting here today and those out there all over the country who have no clue how this is going to affect their lives, but it will. And I don't think it will be for the better. Who's rejoicing? Big corporations, the very wealthy in some cases. Do women and minorities have anything to cheer about with this new Supreme Court? I don't think so. No, let me change that. They don't. Okay? So it's, you know, these are the times that try women's souls, and men's as well. But yeah, it just, look, it's a call to action. It's a call to empower women and minorities to stand up. We have a saying, you get as much justice as you deserve. So in many cases, that's very little justice at all. So unless we fight to win our rights, maintain our rights, move forward to win more rights, we won't have them because, as I always say, no one ever gives us any rights. No one ever gave us any rights as women and minorities. No one ever will. We only have the rights we fought to win. If we didn't fight to win them, we don't have them. If we don't fight to maintain them, we won't have them. So it's up to you. And if we don't assert the rights we have, they'll be meaningless. It's up to all of us. And we need to do more. And we can't afford pessimism or escape. It is not something it's a luxury we can't afford. So we have to just keep on keeping on. And I keep my perspective. However hard it is, it was harder for the suffragists. It was harder for those who wanted equal rights for racial minorities. It's been harder for persons who are victimized because of discrimination on account of their sexual orientation or gender or sexual identity. Because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means it's a call to action to fight even harder for equal rights. So, yeah, if you say, well, it's not fair, well, okay, what are you going to do about it? It isn't fair, and we don't necessarily get the justice we deserve, but we get the justice we fought for and are willing to stand up for.
Great question. I don't think the left of the room is very brave. Go ahead.
And she's not talking politically necessarily. Okay, go ahead.
It's back to the right of the room.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Juliana. I need like your little phone book that you sit on. Sorry. We saw the screening last night and it was wonderful, but it ended in 2017. So I was wondering what you've been up to since.
Just a bit.
Yeah, I know. Sophie said, "Stop, we have to end the film." No, I didn't stop because then I was doing Roy Moore and the accuser that I represented against Roy Moore and more. I don't know. Well, Bill Cosby was just convicted and classified as a violent sexual predator and sentenced to prison. And there's just, I don't know, there's been so much more I'm not even thinking about. I'm fighting for the NFL cheerleaders who are paid minimum wage and, one of whom had to have her skin taped down because she was called skinny fat. So duct tape was put on her. But the idea that, they're cheering for a team that makes multi-millions and they're getting minimum wage and they're not allegedly not being paid for all the work they do, even at minimum wage. There's that. I just have a lot and more coming up very soon. I don't preview it because I don't want those who are in power to be able to have the time advantage. So, but they'll know when it's time for them to know. Okay.
That's brilliant.
I will say the next thing I have planned, well, no, I have a case involving a transgender individual who was violently beaten up in Hollywood, and one of the perpetrators is going to be sentenced this Friday, so I'll have something to say about that. And then in New York on Monday, I'll go to New York on Sunday. On Monday, I'm going to have a very interesting issue that is going to have someone's going to have to deal with. So that'll be an interesting conversation. I don't want to say what now because I think the person knows that I might be coming. I don't want him to know exactly which day and time. So, But yeah, we have a lot. And of course, I'm involved in the Harvey Weinstein issue. I represent the third alleged victim in the criminal case now pending in New York. And just so many more. Oh, I have a civil case against Bill Cosby on behalf of Judy Huth, who alleges that she was 15 years old when she became the victim of child sexual abuse by Mr. Cosby at the Playboy Mansion in Southern California. And there's just so much, there's a lot happening.
Becky, did you have a question?
So thank you again, Gloria. So one phrase we use here is transforming the power base, and you talked about the risks that you advise clients on for every decision. And I just wonder, with a room full of MBAs who are attempting to do that and going into those big corporations who are cheering some of these changes, what would you advise as far as the risks and how we agitate from within versus from the outside?
Could you restate her question?
You talked about, she's wondering what MBAs, we talk in the center about transforming the power base, and sort of for this audience, the power base is generally corporations. So what would you have these people who are going to be entering the power base do?
Well, again, I think you look for opportunities to make a difference for fairness and for change. And I'm not saying there's only one style or way to achieve it. You have to make a judgment call about the best way. Saying nothing is not going to do anything but maintain the status quo, which is usually unfair to women and minorities. But how you make a difference, just decide you're going to do it in a way that you think makes sense for you in your position. And so I leave it to you to judge that. But telling the truth, it matters. So for example, if you were a witness to sexual harassment, you're asked to say that, then you may have this calculation going through your head, whoa, what's gonna happen to me if I say, yes, I saw that? Well, would you want someone to tell the truth if you were the victim? You would. So that should be part of your calculation. Know that if you are retaliated against, you do have rights. And you should consult with a lawyer as to how you can be protecting yourself. Or you can do that before you decide what you're going to do. Or both. But you have the opportunity to make a difference. It's really in the interest of the corporation to get to the truth. And it's good business sense for them to train their workforce, monitor the workplace, make an accuser safe, take appropriate disciplinary action against the wrongdoer, and have the workplace know that they are living the equal employment opportunity challenge and not just talking the talk. It's better for them, because if you just translate it into dollars and cents, which is a language they understand, so I try to speak their language, it's costly for them to have to defend sexual harassment cases. There is reputational damage. There's the time that their executives have to invest in sitting in depositions, talking about what the corporation did or didn't do or failed to do or should have done and didn't do, and all of the rest of it. And there's also the potential risk of a verdict, a judgment in a court of law against the corporation, against the wrongdoer. But even if that doesn't happen, why do they need this? Years of litigation, costs of defense they don't usually care about, but they do care generally about reputational damage, which can be significant, which is why a lot of these cases settle confidentially. But why have to even pay anything if they would have a workplace that lives up to the legal mandate? Then they won't have to pay that cost to victims and to accusers. So it makes good dollars and cents if they look at it that way. You're helping them to lessen their liability. So I just say do what you can do in your workplace and live your honest, authentic life, at the same time protecting yourself, because we want you to continue in the workplace. There are ways to do that. Don't think there's no way. There is a way for you to do that. Okay, so you can act in their interest and your interest as well. Lying is not acceptable, okay? And you will end up, it will not be a good character trait for you to have, and it will lead to major problems for you. I can assure you of that. So President Trump is the leader of the largest workforce in this country, the federal government workforce, to have as the employer of the biggest workforce in the country someone who is not known for truth-telling is a problem. It's also a problem because it sets a bad example for businesses. So I hope I answered your question very well.
You could also
if
say...
not, you could have a follow-up.
You could also say, I know Gloria Steinem. And Gloria Allred, sorry, Gloria Allred. My question is now about Gloria Steinem. Sorry, I had that on the mind.
By the way, I would suggest that you not say you know Gloria Allred.
Oh, I'm saying it on Facebook today.
I know, but wait. But you can call me for a confidential conversation about what you should say, okay? Because I'm not a believer in threats. I'm a believer in think about how you want to handle this and then make the decision. It's usually better because saying you know me is in a way a threat. And I'm glad to be that threat. Okay, that helps women and minorities, but I don't want to use a threat. I want to just, we have to be very strategic. And I'm very protective of your positions in the workplace. So, got to think it out first. Don't try to handle it yourself if you're very concerned that you're in a precarious position. Get advice, whether it's from me or somebody else, before you make your next move.
So I had Gloria Steinem on the brain for the last question, and we're a little running late, so I'm just going to ask it really fast. I was with Gloria Steinem on Friday.
Love her.
I know.
Admire
Unbelievable.
her.
I mean, just being sandwiched between the two of you is daunting. But one of the last question, a young woman stood up and said, so where does feminism go from here? And she looked at her and said, wherever the hell we want it to go.
Great.
What are these people, where do we go from here? Just where do we go?
Well, empowerment is the key word. Action is the key word. We have a democracy that's at risk. We have all of our rights are at risk. And we have to stand up for them. So where we go from here is into the action piece and into the justice piece. All of us in this room are privileged. I always feel privileged every day and very blessed to come from a home with parents who had an 8th grade education, a little row house, and no car, and no money, and all of that. And to be able to fight for justice for someone else. All of you, whatever home you came from, you're privileged to be admitted, and you worked hard for it as students or faculty at Berkeley. Most people will never have that opportunity. Many people are living their lives of quiet desperation. They have no voice, they have no power, and they don't know that they have any rights, or they don't know where to go to assert them, or both. So we have to all understand how privileged we are. Maybe you're the first in the family to be able to go to college. Maybe you're not the first, but maybe you're going to be the first at something in your family. Okay, so we all have a duty to give back. Okay, I happen to be Jewish, and we have a mandate that we need to repair the world. And that just means for all of us that we all have a duty to make this a better world. What is the purpose? Why are we selected to be educated and, to be blessed in this way? So many aren't. So we have a duty to give back. And I'm not a big believer, frankly, in charity. I'm a big believer in rights, because if we have rights, we won't need charity. But it's what we say, not service for service, but service for change. So each one in our own way can make a difference every day in many ways. We can help other people. We can help to empower them. And we need to do that because we know what's at stake. Everyone in this room knows what's at stake. Now the question is, what are you going to do about it? And each in your own way. Go on the internet. You can find ways. Have your voice heard. Take action when it's appropriate to do so. Stand up for others. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your country. Stand up for your values. And do it. Do it when it's hard. Do it when it's risky. Do it every day in every way. And that's how we will win our rights and a better country.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Please help me in thanking Gloria Allred, not Gloria Steinem, not Barbara Boxer, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you.